Welcome to the November 28th edition of Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, where real men don't play. And we're going to go off the grid, so to speak, today and deal intimately with some subject matters that may be of interest to you. And if they are, give us a call at 323-293-3375 here at morrismedialive.com. Again, the show is 323-293-3375. There's been some news breaking in the last couple of weeks. I guess it was inevitable that these shoes had to fall. And it deals with the onslaught of cases that have been exposed dealing with the subject matter of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, predatory behavior, pedophilia, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to posit the question, what's a man supposed to do in 2017? As a person who is now 63 years old, in my formative years, no from a woman was considered foreplay. And here we are all these many years later, and people are being tried in the court of public opinion for things that happened eons ago. And I asked poetess to join in this conversation and give us a female perspective on what is it that we're dealing with as it relates to the question of sexual harassment. What say you, poetess? Well, while are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
And this actually started last week. We were sitting having a conversation, as we sometimes do in advance of the show. And we was talking about Serena Williams and the fact that she had decided to marry outside of the race, and Portis had some strong opinions about that, and that kind of stuck with me. And then there was just an onslaught of sexual harassment-related issues that have become a part of the national news. So what is sexual harassment as you define it, Portis?
Sexual harassment is when a guy first approaches you or hits on you or whatever. It is what it is. But when you tell them to stop and it continues, I think that's when it becomes harassment.
And what are the range of penalties for sexual harassment, in your opinion?
We're seeing it right now. People are being fired from their jobs, losing positions, losing money. So, yeah, I mean, I think people are being more penalized now than they've ever been in my lifetime that I've seen.
Well, I mean, like this Roy Moore case, for those that have been living in a cave or buried on a deserted island somewhere, Roy Moore lives in Alabama. He was formerly an Alabama Supreme Court judge. He was twice removed from the bench for imposing his religion upon the Constitution of both the state of Alabama and the United States. And that emboldened him to take even stronger stances on a variety of issues. But as a Senate seat opened up due to the Attorney General, Jeff Beauregard Sessions, becoming the Attorney General and stepping out of that senatorial position, they had to have a special election. And on December the 12th, that seat's up for grabs between Roy Moore and a gentleman by the name of Doug Jones, who, as a sidebar, was the judge who actually tried and convicted the people, and I'm stretching that word a long way, that actually were a part of the bombing of the church in Alabama back in 1963. So with that being said, one of the issues I got, Portis, with the not so much the guilt or innocence, but is there a statute of limitations on allegations? Because, there's never been a trial, and yet this man is in a position now where his political career hinges on whether people believe the ladies that have accused him of everything from sexual assault to pedophilia.
I don't know that there's I don't know what the statutes of limitations are, but in terms of who all the accusers that are coming out, they also have a challenge of proving that they were in a certain place at a certain time with this person. So that's my thing too, is a lot of people that are coming out, like the girl who claims that who's the guy, Al Franken, grabbed her on her ass years ago at a fair while they were taking a picture. Now, how do you prove that?
And if you do, what is the legal consequence?
And so, yeah, like I've actually seen Mike Tyson grab girls' asses in the club, you know, but it's like, how do you? My mic's sure. What punishment do you pose on getting your ass grabbed, or what degree is sexual assault? I don't know.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Al Franken, because when he was exposed as someone engaging in activity that might be considered unethical, questionable, or even illegal, it kind of leveled the playing field between Democrats and Republicans. And now everybody's kind of quiet on it, because in my opinion, if they went through the halls of Congress and the White House, there wouldn't be nobody left in either of those institutions that at some point haven't been in a situation where they could be accused of sexual harassment, which raises the question going forward, how do we establish the benchmarks for punishing people for crossing the sexual harassment line?
I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't know if there is a specific punishment for grabbing somebody's ass.
Well, it went a little further than that in many instances, but some of the stuff on the surface seems rather sophomoric, like John Conyers. But then again, when you look at the amount of money that's been paid out over a period of years, I know I've heard some figures coming out of D.C. that there's a fund of money, a pool of money set aside for congressmen to deal with, in the millions of dollars, to deal with sexual harassment suits. And it again begs another question. How do we separate these issues from the impact that it has on how they go about doing their business, so to speak? Because right now there's so many important pieces of legislation on the table, and the lead story in the news each day is somebody else has been accused of sexual harassment, not only in the political arena, but particularly in Hollywood and entertainment industry. So how is this going to play out?
I don't know. I've never seen anything like it, but maybe it's about time. You know, it's about time that these guys and women are exposed. But I just hope, like, what's unfortunate is that one person can come out and accuse you of something and it absolutely be false, and you're fired from your job. You're not able to feed your family. You're not, you know. So I hope that with all these investigations, but it seemed like a lot of the guys are fessing up to it. You know, they're apologizing and admitting that they've done it.
And what's that worth?
Hey,
I'm just asking, because
put the question out there. Call us up, 323-293-3375. We're live also on Facebook. We're checking your comments. So, but I don't know. George, call in. George is in the chat room.
And the reason I keep asking this question is everything about our being on some level is sexual. And this wave of issues, as you said a minute ago, is changing people's lives dramatically. And I don't see the sense of alarm at the fact that you can have done something 30 years ago and it was a nonviolent act, but the consequences could be, as you said, the loss of revenue, loss of prestige, and a title that has meant a whole lot to you. So I think we do need to take a closer look at how people are dealing with this. And it just gives me a moment to say, you know, generationally, it's a problem. Because, like I said, in my generation, no was foreplay. And that era was long gone. How
was no foreplay?
It was. No. No. Yeah. I'm just telling you. That's how we got out, you know. But that was 40-some years ago. And that's why we had to have this conversation, because a lot of these people are getting hit over the head many years later. So we do have a call on the line. And welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner. And what's your feelings about this subject matter?
Uncle Bobby, this is George Hope from the Right Along Radio Show, man. And you got a great topic going. I wanted to add my voice to the conversation. You know, you talked about 40 years ago, no being foreplay. You know, and me being 52 years old myself, I understand how things have changed over the last several decades. But, you know, it used to be that women wouldn't want to say yes if they meant yes, just because they would get a bad jack or they were conditioned against that. Now, women will tell you yes if that's what they want. They don't have the need to say no when they mean yes anymore. Now, really, no just means no, right?
Yeah.
There's no shame in yes anymore. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, years ago when this first started being a problem, they went to the city workers, including the police department, and they gave us sexual harassment training and sexual harassment prevention training. Because believe me, we didn't need to be trained. Some of us knew how to do it already. But it was sexual harassment prevention training that we needed. Right? And one of the things they said was, you will be fine if you always conduct yourself while in a business setting as if your mother, your daughter, or your wife was sitting right there with you. Just act like you got some sense in the business environment. And understand that a lot of you have wives that are in the workforce, and you don't want them being sweated by somebody who's in a powerful position, you know? So as long as these dudes remember that, but they don't, man. And I've seen it firsthand when these guys get these powerful positions. And they don't even understand that the reason this woman feels pressure is not because you're necessarily threatening her, but she won't know how you'll take the rejection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they may not give you a forceful no like they would if you were some dude on the bus stop. But these guys look at that and they just take advantage of it, man. And some of it has to do with some of these cats being socially awkward also and not recognizing the signs of that, because some of these guys in these powerful positions, man, they were nerds, you know, and they were guys who had their head in the books, and maybe they didn't get a lot of women or have access to a lot of women, so they didn't really learn how to conduct themselves like they should, and now they get all these women, they don't know how to act, and what happens is you make people uncomfortable, you put people in bad positions, until you turn predatory, like what's his name? Was it Weinstein?
Weinstein, yes.
Yeah, he's a predator, so that's a whole other story. But I mean, some of these guys who just don't realize that you're putting these women on the spot or putting them in a bad position. Now, of course, some of these are lies. Some people are lying on these dudes, but everybody ain't lying on you. You know, when 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 women get together and all have the same story about your MO, and we have to start paying attention, you know.
Now, in your opinion, George, I was looking at a poll earlier today down in Alabama, and it seems as though Roy Moore, the pistol-packing pedophile, is regaining momentum. And what does that say about our country if it becomes more important to elect a person with such a questionable social record becomes one of the most powerful people in the world?
You know what, man? That's a sad commentary, but I like to think that it's confined to states like Alabama, where the age of consent is lower than it is here in California. You know, in California, I would like to think that would be a disqualifier. But there, maybe its cultural norm is different, man. You know, now here's the thing. Somebody who's openly gay maybe not be able to be elected because of that. The electorate might turn on them because of that, because of what the social mores are there. But a 16-year-old girl is fine. Whereas here in California, it'd be the exact opposite. Being gay wouldn't necessarily be a bar to being elected, but messing with some 16, 17-year-old girl would be. You know, they used to say in politics you didn't want to get caught with a live boy or a dead girl. You know, that's what they used to say if you were trying to get elected. Now I guess the live boy thing doesn't matter. You still can't get caught with any dead girls, but you can get caught with an underage girl apparently, and it's okay, man. I really like to think that's an Alabama thing. Now I know you come from the South, so maybe you can shed some light on that.
Well, everywhere has changed so much that I'm actually pretty dizzy right now trying to figure out what's left of the mores from my generation and the present climate socially. For example, you mentioned, is it limited to just the South? I beg to differ because the sitting president of the United States was taped speaking to what he thought he had the ability to do sexually to a woman anytime, anywhere. And he's been back and forth with that story to the point where he has reversed fields. Huh?
He's changing the story and everything now.
Yeah. So I guess my question is it just regional? If you're in power and you're willing to stick to your script, will it prevail in the court of public opinion?
Well, man, we're in a sad and shocking state. I mean, 2 years ago, we would never thought that somebody like Donald Trump would be taken seriously enough to be elected, and that somebody like Roy Moore, had this all been known about him then, that that we would have a situation where people are really talking about this dude still staying in the race and maybe winning.
He's leading right now. Yeah.
Man. That's the thing that kills me. You would have had the good sense and decency 2 years ago just to quit when all this came out. But you got these dudes sticking around now trying to survive this stuff.
Do you have daughters?
I do. I have one.
How old is she?
She is 19 years old.
Okay. If your daughter came home and told you that some guy pushed up on her beyond her comfort level, what would be first your directive to her? Second, what would be your response to him?
Man, I would have to try to equip my daughter with the tools to deal with that, and I would have to leave that to her mother probably. But you asked me about me, so I'm not going to take the easy way out. She would have to learn the tools. So that's going to happen. If you have girls, especially an attractive girl, that's going to keep happening through her life. So she's got to learn the tools to deal with that. But, if it got beyond the point where she could deal with it, fortunately, she's my youngest, and she's got 4 older brothers, And so we might have to take it there. I'd hate to think we'd have to take it there. That they have to end up going there,
Well, just the threat of that helps a lot,
Well, yeah, and she got, out of her 4 older brothers, one is a cop and the other one's a Marine. So, I think that we could get that resolved rather quickly.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying. I just really would hope that she would have to. She was going to have to deal with it on her own and develop those skills, because that's just going to keep happening, unfortunately, in the world we live in. But there's also people she could go tell. Well, she's away at school now, but there's somebody she could go tell also. On the campus, if it got to be beyond her capabilities or beyond what she's ready to do at that age.
So, in your estimation, where does all of the hoopla about sexual harassment take us? And I'm asking that from a generational standpoint, because the modern generation is far more preoccupied with things that, play out in terms of how they interact. I see young people consumed with, being on social media and interacting on that level to the extent where they don't have as much human contact as previous generations. How do we kind of, cobble all this together and come up with some uniform way of dealing with what sexual harassment is or is not?
You know what, man, that's an interesting point, because you're right. My 2 youngest children are 21 and 19, and if they have an issue, they would much rather get on the computer and deal with it as opposed to calling somebody at whatever business it is they have the issue at, because they don't want to deal with people. You're right, it's that social interaction. My 21-year-old drives for Postmates, and I said, well, why don't you drive for Uber too? I don't want to deal with people. Even though he can make more money, Bobby, he can make more money, he would rather do the same job just delivering stuff to people and not having people in the car with him. And it's not that he's antisocial so much, it's just easier for him to deal with the app on his phone and not have to have people in the car and have that level of interaction. And I think that, man, in order to get these kids more socialized, and now how about this? How about the homeschooling thing, too? That's taking kids out of a social environment that, we traditionally had as Americans, Man, I think that kind of thing needs to be really, really looked at, because, we look at technology, the advancements that it gives us, but what's the downside? And the downside is what we're talking about here. The only good thing about this well, not the only good thing. One of the good things about this new generation, though, is that they're being taught from a very early age that that's not cool. They're being told that no is no, and that they're not. My kids don't like even racial jokes. You know, they don't play that. They don't play none of that. You know, my generation thought some of that stuff was funny. This new generation don't play that. They don't think that's funny at all. So maybe with them being more open to fair play and against sexism and racism, et cetera, maybe we won't have these kind of problems. But again, the problems that do come could come out of them not having the social skills that we had to develop. You know, when you wanted to meet a girl, what'd you do? You didn't get on Instagram, or you didn't slide into her DM, as they say, right?
No, you slid a note in class. You couldn't call at home because they only had one phone, and children didn't get to talk on the telephone.
Yeah, exactly. And boys, we had to carry a pen back in the day.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
So you had to actually talk to that girl and get that number and everything. So now they don't have to do that. But I don't know, man. We got to do something. But the sexual harassment thing going on right now is something that went on for far too long. And I don't know any women who are in any kind of environment where they have to work around men who don't have stories to tell.
And I guess that's my next question to you, George, is how do we maybe this is happening generationally in that, you know, some of this stuff is going to take care of itself, but we went from cowboys to girls, and it came without a whole lot of instructions. You know, you had to kind of just find your way through this. But one thing you wanted to do as a young male was to mate. And some of those behaviors that I stated earlier today would be considered sexual harassment. And most of the people that are in trouble right now are from that generation. So how do we adjudicate that? What's really fair? I mean, until somebody's convicted in a court of law, you're supposedly innocent until proven guilty. But in the court of public opinion, it's the other way around. So where's the center of this debate, this argument, this challenge?
I think they're going to get caught out there like racists got caught out there. You know, that was calling people, they dropping the N-word and calling people colored and everything into the 80s and 90s. Well, he's older. He's from that generation. I didn't want to hear that. You know, if I felt I was a victim of racial discrimination, I didn't want to hear that the person who was responsible for calling me that word or you're making that decision against me was from another generation, and that's how they used to do back in that day. I wasn't interested in that. So I don't think that these young women who are working for these 60-year-old congressmen, you know, these young women who are in their 20s, who in their mind no means no, and they mean no when they say no, because if they wanted to say yeah, they would have no problem telling you yeah. I don't think they want to hear that. And I think these dudes are just getting caught out there, man, and these are dudes who did not adjust with the times. You know, you got to adjust with the times. You can't run your office in 2017 like it's 1977. You know, you can't do it. And unfortunately, there's always got to be some examples made, right? And that's what we got, man. Sorry, we have these dudes are getting made examples of. And if people don't heed now, if this is still going on next year, man, shame on them. Because everybody is seeing that we're not tolerating that anymore. So,
well, it's going to be interesting to see
it is.
How it plays out. I know a lot of people are nervous as a hooker in church right now because, you know, that was common practice for generations, you know. And right here in the city of Los Angeles, we had several politicians from, you know, all hues, all shades that had, you know, controversial situations relative to who they were sleeping with and where and when.
Sure.
And
let me tell you something. I witnessed with my own eyes, and I will not say their names, although one is no longer with us. I've seen two prominent male black political figures out with women other than their wives. Okay, I've seen that with my own eyes, and it was clear they was on dates. It wasn't like it's an office thing. It ain't no office thing because it's Valentine's Day. Okay, and I see you sitting with, all right. And one of them was a guy I still have a lot of respect for his legacy, and the other one is a person who's in the community now. He's not really an elected official, but he's an important figure in our community. And I thought that woman with him was his wife, and then I bumped into him and his wife in Vegas. So I know, and I didn't even say that I saw him a couple of months ago because I want to put him out there. You know? So it's still going on, man, and it's just powerful men who just have the ability to do that. But, you know, you can't pressure somebody. You can't pressure somebody into that, man, or behave inappropriately. It's like these dudes have no smooth on theirs, man. I don't know.
So
I'm going to stop talking before I get myself in trouble because I almost said one thing.
One question before we go to break, George, and thank you for calling in. If you were advising John Conyers, what would you suggest that he do?
down, man. But how does he step down without tarnishing that 50-year legacy? And that the man has done so much good, and he's been such an icon in terms of civil rights and everything. You don't want to just throw that out and just tarnish the whole legacy. But he got to go. He can't be reelected. He can't, So what does he do? Does he just maybe not run again?
Well, he's 88 years old, and I saw something earlier today where he showed up at work in his pajamas on a couple of occasions. So
okay, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
so
it's time to go to the house.
Alzheimer's. You take an Alzheimer's exit like Lee Baca did.
Yeah.
And you kind of just blame it on that. I wasn't in my right mind, or don't say nothing. Just kind of show up to work in your pajamas one day, and then nobody sees you again because you resign.
Well, hopefully, and again, thanks so much for stopping by Uncle Bobby's Country Corner. This gives us an opportunity because there's bipartisan skullduggery going on here. We might be able to, hold all of these elected officials more accountable for getting us in a situation where we're discussing their private lives while the country's going to hell in a handbasket.
But what they're saying with Roy Moore, and I love that bipartisan skullduggery. So you guys might start hearing that one on Thursday night.
You got it.
They're saying about Roy Moore is maybe this is the beginning of people not caring about a politician's morality as long as he's effective in office and does votes the way they want him to vote. They're saying that. Maybe this is the beginning of that phase. Because remember, before, they didn't care about politicians' personal lives.
Right.
You didn't hear about that before Gary Hart, maybe, right?
Right.
And now, but then that's all you've been hearing about after that. So maybe we're coming back out of that now, and people will know now but not care about what somebody does in the privacy of their own home.
That wouldn't be so bad if there was some truthfulness. I wasn't cool with Bill Clinton lying all the time.
I know.
We gave him a pass, and a term of endearment, Slick Willie, but in fact, he was crooked as a barrel of rattlesnakes. But the economy was booming, and we just let it roll. So that does say something to what it is that we will tolerate. If your life is pretty well, you're doing good, then hey, man, it never happened.
Right.
Exactly. So, George, thank you, man, for calling in, and please tune in to Ride Along Radio here at Morris Media Studios, and we're going to take a short pause, and we'll be right back.
All right, now, thank you.
Thanks, George. All right, we're black here at Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, where real men don't play, live at Marius Media Studio. Hey, Portis, while we're on the subject of boy meets girl, we've seen a lot of bad basketball this year at the NBA level. Do you think these players have become so detached from having a good girlfriend or a very stable social life that it's affecting play in the NBA?
No, I'm actually seeing some healthy relationships,
Such as
Stephen Curry and his wife, and
this got short.
I just can't think right off, but I don't know, Bobby. That's a tough one.
Well, the reason I asked that question is most of the guys that are number one draft picks nowadays are coming. They're playing 1 year of college ball, or they play overseas for a year. So these are 19, 20-year-old cats. And I'm seeing a lot of ugly basketball. And I just wonder if they haven't had a chance to not only physically adjust to life as a professional basketball player, but socially. And I'm looking at this bald kid. And does he have a girlfriend, Lonzo?
I don't know.
He playing like he needs, some relief, because that shot, boy, Lord have mercy. I don't know if it's going to ever go in. But that's something that's also been on my mind lately, is the fact that professional sports are now more entertainment than competition driven. And I don't know if you have a preference for football, basketball, or baseball, but if you do, what sport would you find yourself more attached to?
Basketball.
Why? Because they got on shorts?
No, I just...
You hesitated when I said that.
I'm not really a sports person, but I actually enjoy watching football and basketball every now and then. So I'm not really loyal or committed to any of it. And it is it is entertainment now.
Do you find it as compelling as it was when the game seems to be more competitive, where guys weren't friends first? Like, they come out there and they pat each other on the shoulder and on the back and everything else. And to me, it's not as intense, the level of competition. And I wonder how much of that has to do with the socialization process. Because I'm looking at a lot of the young guys that are coming into the league now, and they got this thing about shooting that three-pointer, even though they only make maybe 2 out of 20. And it's hard for a person like myself who played the game at the collegiate level briefly to enjoy the game because they miss so much. And there's so little team play, where the ball is really moving around and guys are sharing the ball and the opportunities to make plays other than just a dunk
put
shot.
That out there for the callers because I'm
you
not
clueless,
into
huh?
sports.
Say what?
323-293-3375. We see a few people in the chat room call in on that.
Yeah, what's happened to the game? Will they ever play the game except maybe in the NBA Finals? Because by the time they get down to the Finals, they've kind of weeded out all of the guys that
Because I
really
saw
don't play
a little
well.
clip of the Raiders game this weekend, and they got into
a fight. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess these two guys have been having...
They got history, yeah. And a lot of that comes from competition, too, because those guys that are that spirited, somebody stuck somebody in the throat or they took their girlfriend or something.
Their chain. They've been snatching each other's chain or something.
Yeah, sometimes that's social, too, that spills over onto the court. And that has happened in the past when you look at some of the salacious situations like with Matt Barnes and Derek Fisher, where he drove all the way home from practice, what used to be his house, and found Derek Fisher there and put hands on him. So the social aspect of this is a little different in professional sports than it is, say, for example, in politics. And it makes me ask that question, what and how do we get to a point where it's real clear where the lines are and what are the penalties for bad behavior? And I asked that question broadly because it doesn't seem to be uniform. enough that people can really say, you know what, I know where the line is, and if I cross that line, I'm gonna deal with certain consequences. But in the entertainment arena, you're a little further removed from that because there's so much social interaction. And like in D.C., the bastion of power for the world, there's just that constant interaction between men and women in terms of the duties that they need to perform to run the government, or at least supposedly running the government. And then there's, the work floor in a manufacturing plant. That's going to be a little different environment than it would be in an office setting. You have more opportunity to play around in some settings than you do others. And right now, there seems to be so many gray areas that anybody could be subjected to, he did this to me, she did that to me. And it's a scary time in that regard. You have no suggestions, Portis, as to how we, just give people some ideas about what it is they need to think about as they deal with social interaction in 2017 as we head into the next year?
Well, I think it should go back to the parents in socializing having their kids go out and play and be more active in social activities outside of being on the video games all day or their cell phones or their iPads. So I think a lot of it starts in the home with this generation, because a lot of parents, they are working. And so I think the most convenient thing, too, sometimes is to put them in front of a television or a video game or babies are even knowing how to work iPads. I've seen 1-year-olds navigate through an iPad better than an adult.
That would be me. That would be me, and that's scary because it seems every day that passes, I feel further detached from subsequent generations of people because I don't know if we can find common things to talk about or common things to do. And that's worrisome because part of being an elder means that you pass on certain knowledge to the generations that come behind you. And that's becoming more and more difficult to do as we establish all these multiple platforms. And while I'm on that subject, can you help me to understand net neutrality? I'm hearing a lot of talk about that now. And what it means to this station.
I have to look it up because I just now became aware of this this whole thing because it's been in the news a lot lately. But no, I got to research that more before I can really even speak on that.
What I know broadly about it is who controls bandwidth. And for those that fit into my understanding of bandwidth, I guess that's just where you fit in.
I think it's something with the cable companies being able to monopolize on the internet in terms of what people can see and
when they get to see it, right?
Right, in these searches and browse search engines and stuff like that. So I just got the gist of it. It is something I need to research because my business is primarily based on internet. So I'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah, and the reason that's important is we were the last generation, I was anyway, that had to deal with just three
Yogi
networks.
Fish in the chat room says it has to do with bandwidth. So if anybody out there knows more about it, feel free to call in.
The reason that's important is as we get drawn further and further away from each other in terms of our central humanity and the social mores of a people, that's important to know who's controlling the airspace and whether or not when you speak on a subject, you're actually being heard. Because I know Facebook, for example, will constantly advertise that you can reach more people if you give us $10. Because they know how many people you have within your scope of...
and they control your ad. I mean, if it has too much text in it, because I learned about the whole Facebook game when I was doing my fundraising campaigns. And see, they have algorithms and everything like that could detect certain words that you're using in your post and stuff like that to determine what kind of post it is. If it's promoting something,
then they're gonna charge you for it.
They won't charge you for it, but they'll limit the access to who can see it.
And that's problematic, and it kind of ties back to the original subject, and that is, what is a man supposed to do in 2017 as we go into 2018? Because originally Facebook was arguably conceived to allow people to meet new people, establish relationships with people they didn't know from all over the world. And now that's being compartmentalized into what's the net value of that access to the world. And I notice a lot of times on social media, people, express certain frustrations they have with another person. And then if you make certain comments sexually about somebody, you can end up in Facebook prison and whatnot. And it all seems arbitrary to me. It's like, we're finding our way through this maze that has been created by the information superhighway.
Yeah, I don't know, because right now the internet is pretty free in terms of what people are able to post and have seen. But that's here in the United States. They regulate their internet in other countries. Like, you can't watch certain YouTube videos in certain countries. You can't, you can't post certain things or so there's control and censorship in other countries. Right now, we don't have that yet.
So do you think, and this is another broad question that relates to the theme of what's a man supposed to do if he's looking for companionship? Is Facebook the place to be, or is it Instagram, Twitter? What else is out there?
A lot of people are gravitating to these dating sites.
Such as
blackpeoplemeet.com, match.com, Christian Mingle. There's thousands of dating sites for whatever your preference is. So from what I understand, a lot of successful relationships come out.
That was my next question. Yeah.
I mean, I know just even a couple of my girlfriends who have had, met guys online and have had successful relationships.
Well, then there is some benefit to it in that regard. I know one of the other thoughts I've been, I guess, that occurring more frequently in my mind is how much will these platforms shape public policy as we go forward? Because a lot of young people, because they have so little personal and human interaction, they now live in a world where it's hard to tell what the truth is. Because if you keep telling that lie long enough in this marketplace where it's unchallenged, then it takes on the semblance of the truth.
Yeah, that's another unfortunate thing too, is that in this day and age, people can just post anything without any fact checking, and it could go viral. And a lot of lies, a lot of rumors that have gone unchecked have done just that. And what's sad and unfortunate is that you see a lot of these so-called credible news organizations using some of the inaccurate and misinformation without checking the facts. Like, there's some things, like, for example, this whole Centoya Brown campaign has been going on around in the internet about the young sister that killed one of her tricks about 14 years ago. She's been in prison 13 years. She killed him when she was 16, but she was tried as an adult.
What state was that in?
Tennessee.
What?
Yeah, so she was tried as an adult and sentenced to life in prison. So now this story has recirculated in social media, but some of the posts I've seen and some of the twist I've seen on the story is inaccurate. But people, celebrities, and everybody else is running with the story, although the sister needs to be set free or retried or whatever it is, because she's already served 13 years. She's been abused. She has mental issues. But none of that you're reading in the post. In these posts by celebrities. So I took it upon myself to research that story deeper, and there's actually a documentary out about her story. And it tells the facts. She even explains her situation, and I guess the documentary was made over a period of maybe 10 years of her life, and you see her progress. You see her getting better and dealing with her mental issues. I mean, she came up out of 3 generations of women who were raped, and then she was in an abusive relationship with a pimp. So she definitely needs to be, I think, set free, in my opinion. But their story, that story in itself is going around with some things that aren't actually factual.
Since I'm not as up to speed on that as I would like to be, my question to you at this point, Poetess, is this is being called the Year of the Woman as we move into 2018. From a female perspective, what does that mean to you? Year of the Woman.
I mean, I think that we need to adjust. I mean, we've been so conditioned to be a certain way all of our lives, and especially even before my time, where women weren't allowed to work or vote or have certain rights. So now all that has changed, and I just think we need to change our mindset. And I see we were just discussing on a few of our other podcasts here about men that stay at home and take care of the family versus, and the woman is the breadwinner. A lot of men aren't able to wrap their heads around it, when really at the end of the day, it's all about survival and keeping your family together. If the man has to cook or take care of the kids while the woman is able to bring home money, then you're taking care of your household. So, but a lot of men and even women look down on men who stay at home, saying that they're lazy and that every man should work but with the whole argument with women all these years is they haven't been getting the respect as a housewife. Like, that's not work. It takes a lot of work running a household, raising children. So for many years, women complained that position wasn't respected as real work.
Well, I got mixed emotions about that, because about 10 years ago, I had a vision that would have, I think, at least slowed this process down a little bit. I had tried to engage a Chinese manufacturer with these muzzles. They were supposed to have been very stylish, and I kept having problems with the breathing apparatus on them, And since we weren't able to get that completed in a timely fashion, women kept talking to the point where they have become so vocal and forceful that we do have to deal with women on a certain level now. And it compounds what it is that men need to adjust to, and to what degree we come to some understanding about how do we comport ourselves in the year of the woman. And that's something I'm going to return to in subsequent shows, is what is a man supposed to do in this modern age where the equalizers are women are making more money. They're gaining power in the halls of Congress and all the way down to the local legislative districts and whatnot. So what is this world going to look like, and how do we comport ourselves? And I asked that question more broadly in terms of how do we keep people from going over the edge? Because each year, especially this time of year, we see a lot of people that lose it and commit just unbelievable atrocities. So how do we make that balance work where women are coming up and men are feeling threatened? Because we will get violent.
That's a tough one. I mean, because...
Not me personally, but men will men, males will snap.
Well, is it as simple as men need to step their game up?
We got to do that on many levels. On many levels, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, we got to survive. We got to figure out something. We got to put our egos aside in a lot of situations because our survival depends on it, and especially us in the black community. I think that some of us need to get rid of that needy mentality and start really trying to strategize our survival under this, under the government, under what we're going through now. So, and I don't think that needs to be broadcasted on social media. I don't think that, I don't know.
I guess my final question for you tonight is, what role does the church play or don't play in the formalization of this brave new world that we are quickly moving into?
What roles does the church play?
Yeah, because, for example, down in Alabama, for example, many religious leaders have overlooked the fact that this man, in all likelihood, did commit some kind of offenses, and saying that they want that seat. So does the church lose credibility in a situation wherein you start looking at the facts of a situation, and then you say, well, I don't know. It's more important that we get that seat from a partisan perspective as opposed to the right and wrong of what he did or didn't do.
I always thought there was the whole thing of separation between the church and state, but the lines are so blurred now. It's so intertwined, and I'm not in the church. I'm just gonna put it there. I don't really rely on the churches. I don't believe in the churches. I don't think, and I'm not saying all churches, but a lot of them do a disjustice to our communities, especially if you got a mega church in a neighborhood where people are homeless and hungry. I really have a problem with today's church. So I don't. And again, I'm not saying that all churches, because some churches, smaller churches in the community, I think are more of a benefit than some of these mega churches.
Well, as I wrap up tonight's show, again, the impetus for my solo act tonight was I just been thinking about things lately, and this has been a very daunting year in my life in terms of people transitioning and so much going on that shakes the foundation of my life in terms of having to witness and be a part of the changing of times. And some of the stuff I got to let go of in terms of my personal expectation out of other people, and then be able to funnel my energy towards the things that I can control. And to that extent, I want to give a shout out to James Burks here in Los Angeles. He and I will be collaborating on a book project this coming year, and I'm hopeful it'll be out by the spring of the year. I'm also starting work on Here Comes the Judge, which is a book project about my uncle and auntie, Luther T. Glanton Jr. and Willie Stevenson Glanton. And I guess that's going to be my remedy dealing with all of the things that are going on in this world today, and that is just to narrow my field of play to the things that I can control, and then do what I can to leave indelible footprints that would be worth somebody else following, and let the preceding generations sort this out. And if they need or want some of the experiences that my generation have, I want to be in a position to share them with them, and otherwise stand by for heavy road, because boy, oh boy, oh boy, these coming weeks are going to be very, very interesting. And what I want to do with this show here at Morris Media Live is to continue to produce models of possibility and illuminate some of the better practices for living a life worth living. So thank you once again for letting me be myself, and we'll see you next week.